Hey everyone, Jin from TeaDB here, bringing you a Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be, as you can see, talking about a couple of the teas that are often behind me. The little green box tool is one of the very classic and, in my opinion, a good example of a Xiaguan production. The Jiaji. It's a very common tea. This is not necessarily a very high-end tea, or it's definitely not a very high-end tea in general. And we're going to be comparing a few different productions across these years. If you've been in pu'erh long enough, you start to realize also that there are certain churning point years, and a couple of these we're getting further and further away from them. And it's very, very important, and you can notice a distinct difference in the price, especially. That's probably the first thing you notice, because not a lot of people in the Western pu'erh scene have necessarily had a chance to try productions spanning in this range, but and that year is 2004. And you'll notice that the prices for 2003 to 2004 dai really go, they get a lot more affordable as you get into 2004, and they get a lot more expensive as you go into 2003. And the same is also true to some extent, to a little bit of a lesser extent, for Xiaguan teas. And so this is a chance for us to compare this. For me, at least, the dye production from that era, they're very, very expensive. For me, they're not really worth it. And this, for me, is a lot more accessible to reach out. So these are a couple of the green box tools I bought just over the last 1 or 2 years, really. One of the big reasons that the price, that you see such a distinct difference, is because the quantity that pu'erh was produced really changed a lot, almost overnight in that time frame. And of course, the corresponding years, 2007 to 2008, would be another sort of very important jump in terms of quantity. Quantity is just really, really rising at that point as the demand for pu'erh increased. But we're looking at the 2003-2004 range. Yeah, so one, I think, pretty obvious thing is that probably a lot less of this 2003 Jiaji was produced compared to 2004 and 2005. At least that's what I would guess. So let's first take a look at sort of the price I paid. 2005 I bought for 73 RMB, which translates right now to $12. I think the exchange rate is a little bit worse than it was previously. 2004, just a little bit more expensive, $15, 95 RMB. So that's significantly more expensive, but it's not like night and day. And this one, so going from 2004 to 2003, it's almost double. This I paid 180 RMB, so that's $28 for a tool. So it's still, a very affordable tool. $28 for this. We're using just 4 grams, so that's a little bit over $1 in this session. So it's not expensive, but it's not like you're going to be spending a couple dimes or anything like that on these teas. So there's a very, very big price difference. Another one I bought is the 2010, which is even more inexpensive. I forget what I paid for that, but there's something like 25 RMB. So that would just be $3 or $4. So you can still get sort of semi-aged productions of these for very, very inexpensive prices. So yeah, we're going to look at these differences. Is there a big difference between 2005 and 2004 with the prices being similar? And how is the difference between all of these in 2003? Is 2003 that much more distinct? And how much does that sort of quality change year to year? Because you could be changing quantity, but if you're able to maintain a certain quality, maybe it doesn't change so much. Okay, so let us dig into it. Okay, so I am right in the midst of being caffeinated. I have had about 1 steep of each of these already, just to sort of prep myself and sort of imagine the teas going from left to right, 2005, 2004, and 2003. I have brewed 2005 and 2004 here. Color-wise, maybe 2004 is just very shade darker. Very similar color. This is steep number 2, using 4 grams per 70 milliliters. I'm sorry if you're someone that really likes perfect blind comparisons and stuff like that. Not doing that in the show. Too much work. So you will have to deal with my imperfect, just kind of going steep by steep, not doing anything competition style brews for the show. So yeah, this is steep number 2 for those. So I'm going to pour 2005 in over here, and I will make 2003. Gonna playing a little bit of musical chairs here, and then I'm going to smell these all. Trying to brew them all approximately right. Of course, there are going to be some differences. I don't think I mentioned, but I picked these all up from MXT, which is by no means a given that they've had the exact same storage throughout their lifetime. That just means they've probably been stored similarly, at least in the recent times. So there's always a chance that stuff is stored differently, and that can account for some of the differences. But here in the land of TeaDB, when we do comparisons, they are imperfect ones. So we're going to just see how these compare and take it with the appropriate caveats and grains of salt. So let's take a smell. 2005, which is a tea I brought onto the show in the past. After the first steep, it smelled a little fruitier. This one's a little bit more in that wood category. Not much smoke. This one's maybe a little stickier and barky. I'd say overall quite similar to the 2005. I'm smelling the 2004 right now. Maybe a little bit deeper and darker in general. And let's see, 2003 here. Let's see if this one smells as different as we'd think. It's different, but not that different. Maybe even simpler in a way, and maybe a little less aromatic. Yeah, little just kind of basic woody, I'd say. Okay, so let's drink 2005 here. Nice body. Definitely some bitterness to it, but not overpowering. Pretty drinkable right now. I had noted that the first steep was a little fruitier. This one's a little bit more in that wood category. Definitely a little bit of acridness to that basic taste. Okay, yeah, so, decent, just starting to become drinkable. Could definitely use some more time. For me, the main flaw of the tea is that the aftertaste, reason I gravitate towards Monghai more than Xiaguan is you usually get a more consistent, pleasurable aftertaste that's sweeter with Monghai teas. With Xiaguan, sometimes you have to wait a little longer, or some of their teas, it doesn't have it to that extent. So this tea, not bad. So let's see, 2004. Almost tastes more of a hint of past fire in this one. I wouldn't say it's smoky now or anything, but maybe a bit of barbecue when put head to head versus the 2005. I've had these both, my fair share of sessions. My impression has always been they're very similar to each other, with 2004 being maybe just a little bit better, a little bit darker. But having them side by side, the differences are definitely emphasized a little bit more. Yeah, this one tastes like it was smokier in the past. So yeah, overall, pretty similar. I actually don't know that I preferred one over the other. I kind of thought I would prefer the 2004, but not necessarily obvious to me in that steep. Okay, so let's wait a little bit and see how that sits. Generating some salivation now. Some sweetness coming from both of those brews. Hard to differentiate aftertaste, like that more long hitting you after you have steeped it aftertaste. Okay, so 2003. Cheers. Okay, so that is different. That is more straightforward, bitter. Probably more herbal notes to this. Body-wise, I want to say it's a little bit thicker too. I'd say it also fits a little bit more into those, probably even heavier into the wood notes. I'd say all of these are pretty woody. This is probably more just pine wood. Yeah, that's definitely the strongest sharpness to it. Makes me wonder if perhaps it was a little dry stored, or maybe Xiaguan is always doing some interesting things with the processing to get their sort of characteristic taste. More of a heavier, lingering mouthfeel, and frankly, I'm having a hard time differentiating if that's this tea or if it's just sort of the culmination of all three of these. Starting to feel that sweat. I am drinking a lot of tea on camera. This is a lot of pretty strong tea too. Yeah, okay, so we're going to go in reverse order this time. So we'll start at 2003. So that, again, this is steep number 3 we're doing here on camera. And 2004. I've overfilled that slightly. Try not to burn my fingers. Okay, let's see. Is there much of a color difference between these two? Oops, got some water on here. That's why we have these green boxes. A little bit of protection. Give that a little bit of wet storage. Okay, so 2003, 2004. Similar color, I'd say. I mean, we are talking about teas that are 16, 17, and 18 years old, so don't necessarily expect a huge difference in terms of biological age. We would expect this more to be the case of just, I don't know, how the tea is stored and the production quality differences and the base material as well, of course. So 2005 here. And we will take a smell now of each. 2005, starting to smell a little fruity again. Wood and fruit. Similar combo, but a little heavier on the wood for 2004. Interestingly, I'd say 2003 probably has the weakest aroma of them all, but definitely has a lot more of that upfront sharpness to it. So here, let's do 2003. Sort of a nice texture to this. It's not exactly in that sort of like really fine silkiness to it, but it's sort of in that genre of textures. There's a little less upfront flavor to this as well. And in some ways, this reminds me a little bit more of a very classic tea. I'm not going to say exactly like Munghai, but it feels like it has bitterness and then it's followed by some nice aftertaste and sweetness to it. Nice fruitiness to it as well. Yeah. Pretty nice, pretty pleasant. A nice sort of fruit sweetness that lingers after this. Having this now after taking like a short break between the steeps, it feels I get a little bit more clarity on this brew. I think this 2003 in particular has a solid aftertaste. It feels to me a lot more classical as far as just sort of like a factory tea goes, rather than these two feel very Xiaguan-y. And maybe that just is colored by my experience of having drank a lot of Xiaguan that's sort of in that 2005, 2006 range that makes these feel more like Xiaguan. And maybe this is more reminiscent of sort of like just classic pu'erh tea. Okay, cheers, 2004. Yeah, barbecue campfire wood. If anything, I'd say this tea is a little thicker than that one. It doesn't have that nice silk texture, but it has a bigger body to it. I like this as well. Very interesting. I would not have picked out the 2004 as being like the more of that hearty, smoky, past smokiness, retired smoke I've heard some people use, including myself, in the past. So this one hints the most at sort of that past Xiaguan smoke. So 2004. 2005, let's go. Definitely has the highest notes of them all. Also, it seems like this one, 2005, has the most sort of like unpleasantness in sort of like those acrid notes afterwards, where for me, I really like to have a nice sweetness sort of coat the mouth and stuff like this. And I do feel like 2003 especially does that, and 2004 does that a little bit. 2005 seems to be the one that does that the least, and I don't know how much of that is going to go away with time per se, but for me that would definitely cause me to probably grade 2005 a little bit lower. I think in terms of outward flavors, it's probably just as good as the other ones, but that sort of like lingering dry mouthness to it, not necessarily loving that for that. So I've given the 2005 a 5.9 in the past. I think that seems about reasonable to me. 2004, and you know, these ratings are based off of just sort of the immediate session, so it's only based off of a few steeps right now. I'm gonna give it a 6.1. I think it's like marginally better. I think the main reason I like it a bit more than that is because it seems to have less of that sort of dry mouthness, and it's really emphasized now that I'm having the 2005 now. 2005 the most recently, just the way it's sort of given a little bit of cotton mouth here. And 2003, interesting tea. At this point, I feel like I would be open towards raising it or lowering the rating depending on how I feel. Right now, I think I do like it marginally better than the 2004, but you know, not enough to give it a super high rating. So I'll give this a 6.2 rating. But definitely an interesting test. I would say in terms of differences, 2005 and 2004 I thought were going to be very, very similar. I do think they're similar, but I think they're a little bit more different than I was giving them credit for. 2004 and 2003, I'd say 2003 is definitely the most different from all of them. It feels like it's a different production. You can even see on the box of 2003 that they redesigned the box. I think, unsurprisingly, they were going through a lot of organizational changes, so it's no shocker that they would change sort of the production of one of their very, very classic teas that they're producing each year. So I do think the 2003 is definitely worth trying. To me, if I were buying one and I wanted to just really age it and stuff like that, I would feel the most confident about the 2003, because to me that tastes like a very, very classical tea with pu'erh, raw pu'erh, with like a good strength, good backbone, good aftertaste to it. Whereas these other two, they're very, very I don't know, they're just more Xiaguan, and Xiaguan, it can be hit or miss. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think they're all worth trying for sure. But that's about where I lie here. So let's see, 6.1, 5.9, and what did I say, 6.2? Okay, so that concludes this Inbetweenisode. Let me know how you liked it, if this was interesting. I'm getting probably too caffeinated to really speak too much more on camera, so I guess I will slowly be sipping on these Xiaguans throughout the rest of the day, and I will see y'all next time. Okay, I had a few last thoughts on the Jiajis. I'm filming this the next day, and I was just able to steep 2003 in particular out, but also 2004 and 2005 a little bit. So I do think that 2003 is definitely a better tea and fairly different. Investigating the wet leaves, and I'm sorry, I should have probably taken photos or some video of that. The blend looks very, very different from 2004, 2005. There's more stems and stuff in it. Looks like larger leaves in general. 2004 and 2005 looked fairly similar to one another. So upgrading that rating of the 2003 to a I guess it's 6.3. So we got 5.9, 6.1, and 6.3. So a nice solid step up. But I do think that 2004 and 2005 are much, much more similar to each other than the 2003. So some last thoughts there. Thank you for tuning in. Cheers.